Okay, so in my CAA 3, we are going to be going over some of the Supreme Court rulings that had to do with affecting education, especially ELLs. A really well-known one was the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. This is one of the most well-known rulings of the 20th century, which overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson case. This established a separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Because of this clause, was established to violate the 14th Amendment and mandate to end race-segregated schools. This also achieved integration in schools. Another case that we went over is the Independent School District versus Salvatierra in 1930. This is kind of a lower level case concerning the segregation of Hispanic students predate Brown. This is also the first case in which Texas courts monitored the actions of local school districts regarding the education of children of Mexican descent. This also happened in Rio, Texas, which is a small town near the border. This was a suit against the school district over segregation. The Gui Hyung Lee versus Johnson happened in 1971. It happened in San Francisco. Basically, this case had to do with Chinese Americans who fought a desegregation order that would force students out of neighborhood schools that provided bilingual English-Chinese programs for newcomer Chinese ELL students. This was later appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Mayer versus Nebraska in 1923 was a state law forbidding under penalty the teaching in any private, denominational, parochial, or public school of any modern language other than English to any child. The Engel versus Vitale happened in 1962. It was a New York State rule that allowed public schools to hold a short non-denominational prayer at the beginning of the school day. This is where you see in your everyday school life when you go in and you start the day with saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and you do the non-denominational prayer, which includes the moment of silence. This upholds the establishment clause of the First Amendment. And the reason why this case helped help the ELLs was because it helped mainstream cultural practices in schools, especially for those students who are culturally diverse and wanted to express some kind of religious faith in their school. This is where you see the moment of silence or a non-denominational prayer. The Lau versus Nichols, which is one of the most important courts decision regarding education of language minority students. This brought forward by Chinese American students in San Francisco, their district, who were placed in mainstream classrooms despite their lack of proficiency in English and left to sink or swim. This case argued that Chinese American students were receiving harsh treatment as regards to white students who were getting the better treatment as regards to the Chinese American students. The U.S. versus Texas. This happened in 1971 and then later in 1981. This mandate affected all of the Texas schools. This led to the court ordering the district to create a plan and implement language programs that would help Mexican American students learn English and adjust to American culture. So this is where you see a lot of your ESL programs come into play in your mainstream public schools. Serna versus Portales. This happened in 1974. This was the first case to raise the issue of bilingual education outside of the context of desegregation. This case dealt with a white majority school in New Mexico that failed to meet the unique need of Spanish surname students. This was argued under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits segregation on the basis of any race, color, or national origin in any program that receives federal funding. Castaneda versus Pickard in 1981. This certain case originated in Texas. They charged Raymondville ISD because they were failing to address the needs of ELL students as mandated by the EEOA. They also mandated bilingual education. This case also mandated that programs for language minority students must be based on sound educational theory, implemented effectively with sufficient resources and personnel. So you have to provide the appropriate resources and provide the appropriate staff, such as high quality teachers. Also evaluated to determine whether they are effective in helping students overcome language barriers. And then last but not least, the Farrington versus Tokushige, hope I said that right, in 1927. This court was handed down in Hawaii, and the court offered further protections of after-school community language programs after attempts by education authorities to put restrictions on Japanese and Chinese heritage language programs. This law strictly regulated hours, textbooks, and curriculum of schools that taught in the native language of the students. That was a typo. And it stated that the parents had the right to exercise control over how their children were educated without restrictions that were unrelated to rational state goal. So, and then my last page here are all of the sites that I used that helped me find all of these cases relating to education. So, hope that was very helpful, and thanks so much.